Hello. What's up?
Well, sorry. Hang on. There's video auto playing, and
On
I
my
can't
on my
set it
end?
up. No, my end. The zombie outbreak attraction had a
Oh,
unmutable video.
I hate that. Sorry.
God. Okay.
Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated, episode 101. I am here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Good day.
Good day. This episode, like all episodes, is brought to you by our good friends at Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform. You can create your own website. Anything you want to do, customize it, looks great, build it beautiful. Squarespace. Thanks again for sponsoring our show. We really appreciate it. For those of you who have not yet used Squarespace, they have provided a wonderful offer code for us. It is zombie, not case sensitive. Throw that in. If you're a first time user of Squarespace, they'll give you 10% off. So go ahead, use it, be well, build it beautiful. So what have we got in the news today, Stuart? And what are we talking about?
We are talking about many things, but yes, as usual, we start off with some zombie news from around the world. And one of those things, I've already forgotten what this AMC link was, but
It's the Fear the Walking Dead making of.
yeah. Why did I put this in here?
Because you wanted to see people in the water. I don't
And
know.
there's another video that I can't mute. Well, I can't mute it in front of it. One other thing, though, I want to talk to you about before I get through this commercial. Have you been watching the Flight 462 mini webisodes?
You know, I watched it when we talked about it the last time. I have not kept up with it, but I really enjoyed the parts that I saw before.
Yeah,
So,
they're,
but you can
they're
spoil it for me. I
super
don't care.
super short. Like right, they're really short.
Yep, they're
Little
teeny tiny
episodes.
little vignettes, but they're very effective.
Um, but now they just play all in a row, so you can't really tell how short they are anymore. Now
Ah,
that there's like 17 of them out, so I would recommend that you go and watch them. It's pretty good.
okay, I will do so. I really enjoyed the ones that I had seen before, and I thought that they were a lot of fun. And in fact, I enjoyed them much more so than season one of Fear the Walking Dead. so, so I'm looking forward to it. Then I will do that.
Yeah, and so the video that the AMC video, and I still have no recollection of why I put this in the show notes because I did it like a week ago. It shows. Oh, this is why I never actually even watched this. They show you how the propeller head zombie gets eaten up by the
Oh,
propeller.
okay. Well, I'll check that out then, and so should
And I
everybody
always
else.
wanted to, yeah, I always wanted to see like how because that it's hard to tell when they go from CGI to practical effects. It's a really good zombie kill.
Cool.
They they chop a dude's face up with a Zodiac propeller. It's kind of amazing.
I have to say the transitions now from practical effects to CGI and vice versa are getting pretty scarily like seamless to the point where I mean it's looking pretty good,
Yeah.
much
No,
more
it's,
so than it used to, and it just continues to get better and better.
every so often though, you still get thrown
Yes,
one of
yes,
these
yes.
super dodgy practical effects, and there was
I know.
one in one of the episodes we're going to talk about today, and we'll get there when we talk
Okay.
about it. But it was just a torso that kind of shudders around in the foreground of the shot, and you're like, well, that doesn't even look remotely like a biological entity.
Yep.
Sometimes they still kind of miss the mark. However, so that AMC video will be in the show notes, the link to it anyway. It's just a cool look at how they chopped up that dude's face in the pilot or the premiere of Fear the Walking Dead season 2. And do you want to share any feelings on that at all, HA?
What on the premiere of Fear the Walking
Yeah,
Dead 2?
yeah.
I don't want to get into it right now. I think we can talk about that later.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the next thing that everybody's cousin, uncle,
Everybody's sending
mom,
this to
dad,
me.
yeah, it came from all sides, was the battle of poor, drugged, tough, valiant Millicent and her
Yep.
evil older brothers.
Now, okay, I have to say, first of all, Millicent, fantastic name.
Amazing.
That is a great name. But secondly, no matter what you want to say about this particular video, Millicent's instincts are spot on in terms of
With the whole cat thing.
what no, but everything that you would need to do, making decisions. Her brother's like throwing garden hose in the back, and she's like, "We don't need those. We need guns. We have guns. Why wouldn't we use those?" Like it's pretty good. And she's like, "We're not the army. Why would we do that?" And then when they suggest to go to Costco, and she's like, "It would be a bloodbath there. What are you, stupid?" Like her instincts are pretty good, in terms of what you would need to do. The very distracting thing. So if, sorry to get too far ahead because I guess I just did. But for those of you who didn't see this, Millicent got her wisdom teeth out, and similar to other videos of this nature, she's got like her mouth full of gauze, super drugged up, and her brothers have basically put this whole thing around her recovery from these wisdom teeth, and have plotted to make her think that there's a zombie apocalypse, down to radio announcements, mom calling, all this other stuff. So, but her logic for taking the cat is pretty good instead of the dog.
There wasn't a reason given, was there? Other than
Yes, no, she said the dog was dying. The cat's sound.
Anyway, it's a fun video. I'm just happy.
But it was good. It was good. But yeah, I was pretty happy with this, despite everybody emailing it to me. But it was good. It was good.
So one of the other things that we're going to talk about is Shudder TV, which is a web service that curates horror content for streaming. And I seen this as a sponsored post on my Facebook feed, so they know me, I guess, well enough. Where you pay a monthly fee, and then you can stream their collections, and they've got zombie stuff in there, as well as all the other every horror genre you could think of. And I just thought it was cool. And another move that you and I have kind of always been a fan of, services like Netflix and Hulu and cutting cords. And so this is just another version of that I thought you might like to see too, and maybe some of our listeners might like to hear about.
Yeah, I took a peek around this. I've also seen the adverts, so I guess they have you and I pegged. Although I get some ones that are super like off base as well. Mainly I think because I buy like children's books for my nieces and nephews, so I will see this right alongside some new like children's book by Oliver Jeffers, which is interesting too. But I think that looking at some of the collections they have in place, this is definitely right up the alley of people that are interested in this genre. And it's cool the way they have it broken down. They also have a lot of really obscure stuff in here and independent stuff, which I think for horror fans it's just sort of like manna from heaven. So.
Yeah. Honestly, for horror fans, if they didn't have those esoteric kind of like out of the sides kind of random stuff, they wouldn't. I feel like the horror fans really kind of, that appeals to them, knowing the whole scope of the catalog.
Right, and I do like to, did you take a peek at some of the curated collections? Because some of those were pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's why if I had looked at it and been like, well, this is a piece of shit, I probably wouldn't have wanted to talk about it. But I think it looks pretty cool, and I might be buying into it.
I might too. But even if it was a piece of shit, we'd probably still talk about it because that's fun. I think that's fun as well. But anyway.
Clearly, our podcast is not above talking about pieces of shit.
Yeah, clearly. And then the last little piece in our news cycle this week, there is yet another zombie outbreak attraction, this time in Florida, which to me makes total sense. That the video is super annoying, and I caution anybody who's watching this at home, just be aware there's audio you just really can't mute, and it is very loud, and I found myself turning it off pretty quickly. But anyway, it's there, sort of similar to the one that we talked about in Vegas. But what did you think about it, Stuart?
So yeah, the zombie outbreak business opened up in a space, a 9,400 square foot. It looks like maybe in a strip mall space that was formerly occupied by a steakhouse. And just from the brief glimpse that I had, it looks like it would be, and probably on purpose, dark and kind of a little claustrophobic on the inside.
Yep, I agree, but I also think that given a lot of the stories coming out of Florida, I'd be a little nervous going here. Just throwing that out there. Um, I think it might be fun, but I don't know. I don't know. It's when they were doing the sort of little drive by and showing you the point of view, the first person point of view. I was like, I'm not sure about this, but it looks like I think the kids would have fun.
One huge difference between this and the Las Vegas version is the price starts at $25 a person, as
Right. So
opposed to
it's a lot
200 in
cheaper.
Vegas. Yeah, so they must be offering something much more like laser tag, but I think there are still real, yeah, they're live actors playing zombies inside. So
Hmm.
it's just it's probably going to be night and day as far as what those two experiences are.
Right, and fun for the whole family. Anyway, so are you ready to talk about our final two episodes in season 4 of The Walking Dead?
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
Woohoo! So first up, we've got Us, which is directed by Mr. Greg Nicotero, written by Nicole Beatty and Seth Hoffman, and it got a pretty good number of watchers, which was 13.47 million. And this is focusing a lot on Glenn and Abraham and that whole dynamic, and Eugene. Tara, and I always forget who the other woman is in this group.
Rosita?
Rosita. And I admit to you, like, this episode and the next episode blend a little bit in my head. So this episode also has Daryl with the Claimers, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
So
because this is where Daryl learns about claiming.
right. This is
the
the whole
episode
claiming
where he
thing, which
gets
is a really
gets,
messed
like,
up
read
one.
in. Yeah, and again, like the more we learn about this group of quote unquote survivors, the less I'm convinced that they really should still exist, especially given how easily they just seem to kill their own people. Like
Right.
yeah,
It doesn't seem like a good plan for survival at all, and I agree with you. And I
it's
was
not that
thinking,
many
no, there's
of
not
them.
that many, but who knows? Maybe they started out as like 50. But yeah. So,
Yeah,
want to
but
kick
they've
it
just
off?
been beating each other to death for perceived slights. Yeah, sure. Yes. So, I thought we already had kicked it off.
No. Kick off the.
Or are you
the
talking
sort
about
of-
the claimers?
About the Claimers.
Yeah, the first scene with the claimers shows a zombie walking up to their camp. Everybody's doing this with their camps. In these episodes, basically these wandering through the woods, they're setting up those cans with string as like your early warning system. Although they
It's-
usually do it just a couple feet from where they're sleeping, so it's not
I know.
actually an early warning.
It
It's
doesn't
like
make
just-
sense. It's like the new hotness in alarm systems for these camps, apparently.
Yeah,
But
it will give you 20 seconds, if that, to wake up from a deep sleep and defend yourself. In this case, though, the claimers have barbed wire going around their camp, and you get to see a zombie slough its entire face off onto some barbed wire fence, which is really fun to watch.
it is. And the interesting stuff about Daryl learning about the Claimers and about sort of what happens with their code is that I don't know, like there's I find it hard to believe that he wouldn't, and I guess he is a little bit stuck with them to some extent. I do get the sense that he's kind of trying to figure out a way to get away from them, even from the beginning. But he's kind of alone out there, so there's no real easy way to do that without sort of tipping them off. And they're a volatile group.
Not to throw my gender under the bus, but to run into a group of just dudes, and none of them are young. They're all kind of like, I don't know, mid-20s to however old Joe is, which is probably like 40s, 50s. There's nothing like holding these guys back from being super savage, right? Because that's the perception that we have in society of like, well, men are going to be terrible, violent people if they're just in their own company. So
Right.
it's like that lack of diversity in their group kind of makes you think, well, they're probably not going to be good people.
Right. And then, of course, it gets right into that pretty quickly where it sets it up, and you're seeing exactly how they've been living, or at least you're getting hints of it. And Daryl has been hunting, and one of the claimers tries to claim his rabbit. and so then he finds out that basically anything they see, they can claim. So, like, they see a tree and they're like, it's mine. Well, then that's that person's. And Daryl, rightly so, is like, that's just stupid. But is schooled.
Until he starts claiming shit by the end of the episode.
He does, but I think it's a survival tactic, as you would have to with this group. But then there's other comments that are definitely tipping Daryl off and the audience off that things aren't quite right. And one of them says something to him like, oh, obviously your head's messed up because of a woman, and then says, oh, was it a young one? And that right there just tells you this is not a good group of people. Because the guy is like, he's basically like, yeah, you know, if you've got a young one, you were taking, like, he's not talking about a consensual, like, relationship. They're just, so it's definitely a little bit, I don't want to say off-putting, but you definitely see the little, not the crazy eyes from Daryl, but the sort of like, oh, I understand eyes from Daryl, and kind of figuring out a plan.
Most of the conversation from the claimers, I mean, other than Len or Lem or whatever his name is, being a jerk and just picking a fight with Daryl for no good reason, it's Joe who is like the reasonable one, who is the only reason because none of the rest of them talk, right?
Right.
Except for. God, we get to hear his name, the guy who got choked out when Rick was under the bed.
Oh my gosh, and they bring up his name several times, and I can't remember right now.
They're like, nobody saw his face except for
Tony.
Is it Tony?
I think so.
We'll call him Tony. He gets to talk in the next episode, but none of the rest of these guys talk, really. Also, the pedophile gets to talk really quickly right before the end.
Yeah, well, I think the less we hear from him, the better.
But for all we know, they're all pedophiles.
True.
So I have a feeling that if we heard more of them talking, we would have even less sympathy, and we'd be even more surprised that Daryl was still with them. But most of their dialogue isn't featured in the show, so because they have nothing redeeming to say, or if they do, the show doesn't want us to hear it, you know.
Right.
Joe, however, is like a pretty reasonable, or he comes across reasonable, when actually he's. Like his vision is super short-sighted, and short-lived, as it turns out.
Well, I mean, his vision is basically like, it doesn't matter whether they're good people or not, as long as you follow the rules, and the rules are totally black and white. So the rules are, you see something, it's you claim it, it's yours. The other rule is you don't lie. And was there a third rule? Because I think those were pretty much the only two rules that I could gather. And if you violate any of those rules, then the rest of the group can stomp you to death or beat you to death.
Yeah, but I don't think death is the only punishment. But it turns out that the only two times we see
that's the punishment.
He's like, teach him a lesson all the way is like the code for beat this guy to death now. But we only see one of those beatings happen in this episode, and that's towards the end. So maybe we should also, one of the other scenes we see up at the beginning of the episode is Carl Michonne and Rick like having a good time, like laughing and joking around. So there's more of that happening, and I feel like that is also definitely, when you say these two episodes run together, I absolutely agree, because I think the juxtaposition between like their happy existence and the bleak existence that maybe they're having to live, except they're definitely trying to paint parallels between how they're, how happy they can be and how unhappy they are at any given moment.
Yep. Agreed.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about the Glenn stuff too.
Right. So a lot of the Glenn stuff, I mean, I found some of the Glenn interactions with his group to be a little bit annoying, because it just continues to be like the same theme, which is that, I mean, we do see at the beginning of this, Glenn finally finds Maggie's message, telling him to go to Terminus, and he just starts running, and he's continually like, I'm going this way. And Abraham is like, well, we can't do that. And this happens like a few times. And I don't know. What did you think about that interaction and that continued theme with this group?
More annoying to me was that Glenn thinks he's going to run all the way to Terminus
Well, that too.
and doesn't really. He is being and I'm glad somebody calls him out, and it's Rosita during this episode. She's like, "Stop being such an asshole. Tara's obviously going to do whatever you ask of her, and you need to take care of that. Like, you can't just be the jerk who's going to run all the way somewhere."
Well, right. And I also feel like Glenn, yeah, we know that he wants to get to Maggie, but I also feel like some of the decisions that he makes are just not in his character, because there are stupid, dangerous decisions that he makes which would totally mean he wouldn't get to her. And while I understand he's trying to make sure that the same bad fate didn't happen to her, this just doesn't make sense to me. And this is one of those things where, and we have talked about this ad nauseum, but where sometimes I think the writers of the show just sort of force these character arcs for the sake of drama, and it's just it's counter to everything that you know about that character,
Right.
And what they would actually do.
Right. As soon as he finds out that she's not even alone, she's with two other capable people. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need to sprint and at the risk of the rest of his group and of his I don't know, protege or whatever you want to call Tara.
Right.
I kind of enjoyed Tara's performance in this episode and the next one. Whenever she meets a new person from the group, she looks like she's I don't know, like a stray dog who's with her tail between her legs, just like, "Oh, hi, please don't kill me. You don't know anything about me." But I enjoyed. I don't know. I thought that was like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I also liked her bizarro interactions with Eugene. Those are pretty cool.
It's mostly Eugene's bizarro interactions with her, right?
Well, that too, but it's just sort of her giving him the side eye all the time, which is, he's like, "What kind of games do you like?" And this and that, and he's just super like nerdy, and I kind of like that, and very just. And ultimately, he is not necessarily a bad person. Like, he's trying to do the right thing, but he just has a very interesting affect. And then Abraham's interactions with her as well are pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. So he shows up as being quite the insightful person when he's like catching her looking down Rosita's shirt. As always, Abraham has a lot of really good one-liners, as does Eugene. The two of them. Both being introduced at the same time and being like, intertwined characters is almost unfair because they both have such good one-liners written for them.
Yep. And let's see, what else do we have?
The tunnel basically is the biggest element of this episode, and that's what we've been talking about, is like that Glenn would even go through the tunnel. He's like, "Oh, going around it would take more than a day." No idea if that's true, and it turns out that Abraham and those guys managed to get there in less time.
Yeah, and they find a car.
Yeah.
And there was the nice interaction where Eugene basically tricks Rosita into driving around in circles because he does want to rescue Glenn and Tara, and it is funny once she realizes what he's actually doing.
Yeah.
But also, again, he had gotten them lost before, and he's all annoyed because he's played virtual video games and been able to map things out, so that's his excuse, which is kind of lame, but it is very funny.
Given that he's already brought up video games once in this episode, he laid the groundwork for that joke, so that was good.
Yes, it was good.
In the tunnel, Tara decides that she should tell Glenn and us the story of the end of the siege, and she describes Lily's death, whose death we never got to see on screen. The last thing we see of her is that she kills the governor. Mm-hmm. And then she's surrounded by zombies and eaten. Tara talks about having seen that, even though where she was, I don't know if she had much of a view.
Right.
Because remember where she was when Glenn found her. She was like behind that little fence. And she talks about having seen Megan. And I guess that was before the advance up to the prison. So maybe she could have seen that before they left. She talks about seeing a bunch of stuff is basically all I'm saying.
Well, no, but I mean, doesn't Lily carry her
but
niece? And
by then the firefight's going on. I just don't remember if we had a shot of Tara seeing that or not.
No. Okay.
And then she's like, "Yeah, I guess I really knew that he wasn't a good guy when he cut off Herschel's head."
Yeah.
And we had a another thing that happens in the tunnel is we had a feature zombie or whatever they call it, an homage zombie.
Oh, yeah, we definitely did.
Yeah, and so I didn't even know I was supposed to be looking for these until you pointed one out a few episodes ago, and then you saw Bub like
Yep.
immediately, right?
Yep, of
And
course.
I pull up a picture and it's like, yep, because they showed his whole outfit, so I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, that must be like another tip of the cap. So I looked it up and like, yep, he's wearing the same exact clothes.
Yep.
The only thing that's missing, I guess, is the chain. I
No,
don't know
no,
if
the chain was there around the neck.
I saw the like there was a bracket, but I didn't know if they were supposed to also be a length of chain or not. But either way, like the face, the expression is very close, wasn't it? It was good.
Yeah, it was really good. I was very happy to see Bub there.
Bub, we reviewed that one, didn't we? What movie was that? Day of the Dead?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. So that was cool. What did you have any thoughts about the insane wall and collapsed area from the
Well,
tunnel?
I did like that effect. I mean, I thought it was kind of cool because they don't know how many walkers are in there. And then when they come in and they see that there is this crazy sort of like uh, tunnel cave in, keeping the walkers from getting to them. I thought that was cool. Again, Glenn does some stupid stuff, and he says that he's looking for Maggie. He wants to make sure she's not dead and not one of the walkers, but in doing so, basically attracts this whole horde of zombies towards them. So again, this doesn't seem to me like something Glenn would actually do. And I mean, maybe he would, but just it seems so short sighted and ultimately leads to Tara getting hurt even more. And she's already kind of limping because she twisted her ankle
Yeah.
before coming in there. So, and it leads to this whole wonderful rescue where we see, this group of people rescuing them and reuniting Glenn and Maggie, which is a little bit of a nice little moment. But how they get there really just troubled me a bit.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and then but the Glenn does sort of have like the reawakening of his character's ethics when he refuses to leave
Tara,
Tara when
yeah,
she
that's
hurts
true.
herself, and he's like, no, you know what? I'm not even gonna like I'm not he based on his actions so far this episode, he would run off and try and find Maggie no matter what and leave her when she tells him to leave her. He's like, nope, not leaving you. I will die here with you, essentially. And and it all works out. And honestly, we need to start keeping track of how many times Glenn gets rescued. Starting, I don't
Now?
even know. Yeah,
I don't know.
it's already happened a few times, but Glenn is like facing certain death. This is just a very overly done theme in this show, especially once you watch season 6. And I feel like he has, unless he didn't survive season 6, he has like 4 brushes with certain death in that season alone. It's just nuts. Anyway, Maggie wanting to burn the photo of herself that he's been carrying and like that's been pushing him along. How did you think about that?
I thought that was a little silly. I understand why they did it, but I was just kind of like, that's a little lame because, it's the only photo that he has of her. And in this world, it would be nice to have it. And her reason for wanting to burn it is that he'll never need a photo again because they'll never be apart. Well, you know
Bullshit.
what? Bullshit. You're so full of shit. That's not happening. You should just let him have this little token. You never know when he's going to come across one of those weird little Polaroid cameras again, my friend. So anyway, I just thought that was ridiculous, but
Yeah.
you know, and in fact, I think I said something like bullshit out loud when I was watching it. So
Yeah. So after like a night of I don't know getting to know each other and sleeping tight in the tunnel, they get to Terminus. We get to see Terminus finally, and it's unbelievable, honestly. Which is my main takeaway was disbelief. I'm just like, this is it. Wait, and oh, there's just a lady grilling, and there's nobody on the perimeter.
yeah,
The gates aren't locked. There's
it
all they have is
felt
chain
like a
link
trap.
fence.
It felt like a trap. It also felt unbelievable. There's no walkers around. Give me a break. We've seen walkers every single step of this way
Yeah,
along the tracks in the
this is
woods.
a long term community, that's been
And
here. They say it's been here in the next episode. They say it's been here since the beginning almost.
right.
Like the prison can't go a day without getting another swarm of zombies on the perimeter fence. Why are there zero around Terminus? And why is the chain link fence that they walked
Unlocked.
through enough to why is it unlocked, and why would that ever be enough to, like, knowing what we know about Terminus,
Right.
this it still has to be a functional community for the people who live there, even if the people who they are luring there are not really being lured in the best of intentions.
Right.
They still have to have walls that they can defend from the zombies, but they don't even seem to have that.
Right.
'Cause
And so there's just, I mean, that was going through my head. It went through my head the first time I saw this. It was really annoying me this time that I saw this. And I just found it completely, like, if they were luring people in, it would make sense to me to have maybe another area where you're kind of taking the travelers and doing your dirty business or whatever you're doing. I just don't find it plausible that this is what the reality would be. And it just seems just, I mean, yes, you get that whole feeling that it's too good to be true, and I think that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to distrust this, but even in a practical sense, I just don't buy it. So I feel like they could have set this up in a different way. As you said, the prison had sort of daily horde encounters. They had like all of them sort of lined up on the fence, and I think that that's exactly what would happen here, because the walkers are all going to be attracted to where the food is, basically. And you're cooking food too.
yeah, there's
You know what
noise
I mean?
coming
Like,
from their containers. Not that you can hear that when Glenn and his guys get there, but
but
there's
when the rest of them get there, you can hear that pretty loud and clear.
yeah, there's a
So,
lot of people in this area, and that's going to attract all kinds of stuff.
right.
Yeah. Either way, it's just that's a little frustrating, and they lure the audience into thinking everything's fine because they play some really upbeat, like hippie
Yeah.
guitar music.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Mary grilling, and I think everybody has the
Reaction,
same
probably.
reaction when they see grilling meat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't
It's like,
see any cows, so
nope,
nope.
no pigs, no cows, no nothing. Hmm.
Yeah, but there's Terminus. We've arrived.
There
Those
is
who,
no Soylent Green, though, so I guess that should be a positive.
well, as it turns out, there kind of is, isn't there?
There kind of is. That's true. That's true. Yeah. So there's that. And then just to circle back to the Daryl Claimer's piece, I do think that it's the piece that I do think makes sense here is that when they lay out the code of morals, when Joe's laying out the code of morals for Daryl, Daryl, they do then give an example of this code in action, and I wouldn't call them morals. I guess I would just call them rules, and that's when Len accuses Daryl of stealing the rabbit,
Right.
and Joe makes this interesting comment that's like, "Oh, are you playing your dirty cop tricks?" And Daryl's like, "Oh, I totally did not steal that rabbit. Why would I need to do that?" And all this other stuff, and then basically Joe had seen Len putting the rabbit in the bag, and so had the group kill him. And Daryl, then we get the visual where he sees the body, where Daryl's like, okay. And it's kind of like he has like a look of disgust on his face when he sees the body. So you definitely, I think you get a sense that he's not in with them. Did you get that sense too?
Well, I did until he goes to cover it up with a cloth, and then he like changes his mind and casts it aside and scurries after the rest of the claimers. So I think we're supposed to be left with in that episode like he that's
He's joining
that's
them, and then he's claiming
implicitly
stuff.
condoning their behavior.
Right. And then he's
yeah,
claiming stuff.
exactly.
Yeah, you're
He's
right. You're
claiming
right.
strawberries by the so you're like, oh, okay, I guess he's down with it now.
I kind of saw his look on the face. I saw him claiming things, and the way he claimed it gave me this thing like, oh, I'm just kind of camouflaging myself until I can figure out a way out of this rat trap. But
I don't think he's not a Carol. He's not a camouflager.
but he's a hunter, so he's a little bit of a camouflager.
For all he knows, everybody he's known is dead, so he's going with it, and I'm fine with that.
All right. Well, then that wraps up that episode, and then we jump into the next episode, which was the season finale, A, and that had a massive audience.
Yeah, and a very high rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Right. Directed by Michelle McLaren, written by Scott Gimple and Angela Kane. And I thought this was a great season finale.
It definitely is on the cliffhanger side of things, which obviously kind of bit the show in the ass in season 6. But it's not nearly as bad of a
Yeah, but it's
cliffhanger.
not a cliffhanger that makes people angry, which is what
'Cause-
happened in season 6.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
so,
this is
well, what I was gonna say is like we start to go into flashbacks, which
oh yeah.
with Rick means crazy pants time.
Well, the first thing we see is his bloody face, and his
Hmm.
hands are twitching, and his eyes are all bug-eyed. But then
Hmm.
he's like flashing back to the happier days at the prison, like the happiest days at the prison, probably. And it's an interesting series of flashbacks. It shows his transition from hunter gatherer to, or like survivor mode, but happy survivor, into farmer and pacifist, which kind of, and it's actually mostly damning of Herschel and his philosophy.
Yeah, I mean not Daryl, sorry, Herschel, is definitely he became the sort of moral voice, the ethical voice. We need to survive. We need more than just to be fighting for our lives. We need to have other things. It's okay to settle down, not to be on high alert. And the flashbacks that we see are Herschel bringing Rick back over to this way. And remember, Rick at this point had been seeing visions of his wife and
Hmm.
been talking on the phone to her ghost, and definitely was down the path of not sane. so so this was Herschel bringing him back, also repairing the relationship between Rick and Carl, because Carl, as you remember, had killed the kid, and Rick was definitely like, we need to bring him back from this behavior, and Herschel's trying to show him a path. And you're correct, this did not work out at all. And in fact, the pigs that they're showing and talking about taming were part of what brought the downfall of the prison.
Right. Yeah.
So it's damning of Herschel's way.
Eh,
But it
you
was
know,
also nice to see Herschel's face again.
of course, I knew you'd say that. You
You
love
know
that
I
guy.
love him. I love him.
When he says something like "it can be like this all the time," it almost feels like a dream sequence, because that seems like something your spirit guide would tell you in a dream where you're happy, and you're like, oh no, I can't. Like, it's like that right. It's like this right now, so that's good enough.
Hmm.
Is Rick's response. But I'm like, you guys are all just fooling yourselves. I mean, that's certainly what Gimple and Kang are trying to make us think.
Hmm.
Because again, like we talked about last or 2 episodes ago when we were talking about that article written by the lawyer, um, the show doesn't let you get past survival
Nope.
mode.
Nope.
So this is like a noble attempt, I guess. But
Well, and everybody up until this point who has said something other is gone.
yeah,
So you've got Herschel. Before that, you had Dale.
yeah.
Um,
Well, Rick buys in. I mean, he is like a disciple of
oh
this
no, he
movement, and
is.
yet he's still alive, right? Because he's able to transition back and forth.
He transitions.
It's just I think ultimately I don't think that farming is like going to be an automatic fail in this world. It's just that you have to be able to do both.
Hmm. You can't just dedicate yourself to the little agricultural life. That just doesn't work.
Yeah. So, but in the episode, it starts off with Rick's twitching, bloody face, which is always a good sign. It means that
Hmm.
there's some, there are good times ahead. Um, and we kind of do another. I don't know. There's a lot. The timeline in this episode's a little bit tricky, really, because there's flashbacks. And then there's flashbacks.
Right. There's like, it is a little bit tricky.
Yeah, because we do some basic snare training with Rick and Michonne and
Hmm.
Carl, and then followed by a man screaming for help. It's one of these scenes that I feel like I was in Fish Called Wanda or Austin Powers, where guy screaming for help, too busy screaming to bother with running away.
Yeah, I know, which is kind of weird. It was even the way he got surrounded by the walkers seemed weird to me.
There was a lot of obviously they were coming from every direction, which is unlikely, and he just wasn't running. He decided just to scream.
and stand in place and look desperate. Um, and yeah, so basically Rick, Carl, and Michonne leave the guy to be eaten. But by the time they actually got there, he was already being torn apart, so there really wasn't much
No,
that they could do.
no, it was the right call. It was the only call. And then they're being chased by those zombies, run out into the tracks. What I didn't get here was they run out to the tracks. Michonne pauses because she sees what, three zombies in front
I
of her.
know, and it's sort of like, okay, no kidding. You wouldn't pause. There's only 3 of them.
She can kill 10 zombies. I
Anything.
mean, even in this season, since the prison, she has stood inside a circle of a dozen or more zombies and killed them all without, you know, breaking a
Right,
sweat.
and I even felt like running out onto the tracks, all right, there's 3, you dispatch them, and you've managed to sort of, because they're still interested in the guy that they're tearing apart, there's fewer that are coming after you, so you can dispatch them in a more, civilized manner, I suppose. But it just seemed, again, this is one of those things where I just don't buy what they're doing with the character, and so it seemed a little silly to me.
I'm not sure what they were going after with that. With
No,
that, other than maybe they've been having too many good times, and so she's losing her edge a little bit.
maybe.
But I don't know.
And then and then there's a lot of nice moments, and there was nice moments in the last episode between Michonne and Carl, lots of joking around between them, and even in this episode we see again that bond between Michonne and Carl, which is nice to see, and especially those lighter moments, which I know it means that the dark times are around the corner, and this is no exception. But it's good to see the bond between these 3 is not just survival. It is survival, but I think that they genuinely like and trust each other. And so that's a positive, I think. And I do think that one of the more disturbing scenes is the ambush that happens. But I want to know what you think about the ambush.
These guys are super quiet walking through the forest at night. So way to go, you
Yes.
guys.
I guess, but I don't know, they just don't, for them to sneak up, and the way that Rick and Michonne are keeping camp doesn't make sense to me either, but okay. But in any case, they get ambushed by the claimers, and
Not just ambushed, but like walked up on.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's crazy, right? So
Before they can even react, there are guns to their heads. So people have gotten within inches of them in the forest at night without making a sound, other than one sound where Rick and Michonne get up and look around, but they're like, it was nothing.
right.
And they're just talking about Terminus, and Michonne's like, I wonder if it's legit. I wonder if it's for real.
Well, and I
Rick's-
guess this is the part that bothers me a little bit about the whole, like, where they're camping and how they're camping, is that, okay, so we've got all these signs to Terminus. There's going to be other people following the trail there, right?
well, they're on the road. They're not on the tracks at this point.
They're not quite on the tracks, but still, if all points are leading to this
Yeah.
sanctuary, it just seems weird to me that they wouldn't be a little bit more on guard. But again, yes, they're talking about whether it's real or not, and how to proceed when they're ambushed.
Yeah. So the ambush is. It's also, we've learned that the claim, we learned in the last episode that the claimers are going after whoever it was, that the piece of fecal matter, as they describe him, who killed their friend Lou in the
Sorry,
bathroom.
it was Lou, not wait, and Tony was the one who saw him. Yes.
Yeah.
But again, would you would they care this much? Since they dispatch
yeah.
each other so quickly, would they even really give a crap about the fact that one of their dirty, disgusting members is dead? Because they
does
seem to not
seem-
have a problem with it when they're doing it. I just don't buy their code.
It seems
So-
like a stretch that given how quickly they seem to be dropping each other and by other people, why they would give a shit. Yeah, but maybe this is just a group of people who need something to do, and they're just
Perhaps it gives
they've
them a
decided-
goal.
Yeah, and maybe that's Joe's leadership mentality, is he will turn them onto an external enemy.
Right. So that they
in order
don't
to-
infight.
Yeah, and maybe that's the only way to do it. But they then do like the classic Bond villain thing where they try to talk the bad guys. They try to talk their enemies to death.
Monologuing.
Yeah. Like, I'm gonna kill you real slow, and then I'm gonna, oh God. And Daryl shows up and slows it down even more. And this is where Joe's rules also appear to be complete. Like Joe, essentially, he's like, these are the rules, and you got to follow the rules. And he has enough idiots following him who are like, oh, rules, great. But when it comes down to it, he's the one who decides what's the lie and what's truth, right?
True. Like he's
So
the one.
yeah,
And
so it's
and Daryl is trying to reason and saying these are good people, and he's like, "You're a liar, kill you!" And so there's that going on. And then you've got the really disturbing thing with Dan, who's trying to rape Carl.
that guy's name was Dan.
Yes,
Great.
but
I'm still gonna refer to
also
him
wants
as pedo.
But it's not just that, but they're also talking about Michonne and raping her. And so during all of this monologuing, there is a very unlikely series of events, in my opinion.
Yeah. Can I? I
Go
do
for
have
it.
some issues with this.
I'm
So,
going to let you dive in, so to speak.
Daryl is getting beat up by two guys, which I'm like, Daryl has beaten up two guys before.
Exactly.
Okay, that's point one. Carl is pulled out of the car. Where's his gun? By a guy with a knife and no gun. Pedo guy. Dan. Pedo
Yes.
Dan, let's call him.
Pedo Dan, but Carl always has that damn gun on him.
I know.
Always. I just don't buy it.
Rick and Michonne both have one person holding them at gunpoint. Rick and Michonne both tried to escape and both get pistol whipped. And I don't know if
In
you've
the
ever
same
been,
exact way.
have you ever been pistol whipped?
Thankfully, no, but it looks like I think you would be down on the ground. You would not be up that quickly.
I don't think you would be able to then fight effectively. Carl then gets flipped over by Pedo Dan, and it's getting uncomfortable for everybody. Like
For everybody.
everybody's uncomfortable. Joe and right, yeah. Then Rick headbutts Joe.
And the weapon goes off.
Yeah, weapon goes off. Joe then beats him up again though, and then gives him the big hug and says, "What are you gonna do now?"
Yes,
Rick
and then Rick goes full on crazy
Full on.
Rick. Crazy Rick.
Yeah.
Walker Rick that we've seen in the past. He transforms into his Walker self, I guess is what you would call it, and tears out Joe's jugular.
Yeah, and that's the end of Joe. And then apparently this happening is enough to get all the other claimers completely confounded because
Their leader's gone.
Tony's looking over at what just happened. Michonne is like, all right, I'm fine now. I will just turn his gun on himself and have him shoot his own face out. Daryl is suddenly not getting beat up and is able to punch both of these
Superhero
guys.
his way out of it.
Michonne does kill one of them, but the other one, Daryl kills with one boot stomp to the head. Like the fact that they kill all, and then Pedo Dan goes out like squealing like a pig, while everybody watches, and it's very, very difficult to listen to too, with the squelching of the knife going in and out.
It is, with Carl and Michonne looking on, but then there is a feeling that you get with Carl, which is like good.
Good, or
like
who is that guy doing that to Pedo Dan?
that too.
Because Rick does not look okay.
No, he does not.
Here's also a weird thing. Like, Pedo Dan is holding Carl. They're standing up now. Pedo Dan has the knife to Carl's throat. He's like, I will kill him. And then Rick's just like, he grabs Joe's knife and he's like, this is mine or whatever. And he starts walking towards him. He's walking. Like, how does he know Pedo Dan's not going to cut Carl's throat?
Right, and Carl's not moving. So I'm
not
just kind of
care?
like, I don't know. I think he's out of his mind at that point.
And then as he gets closer, Pedo Dan pushes Carl away because that's his leverage, and that makes zero sense. And he's like, spare me or whatever. And then he gets cut from his lower stomach up to his upper chest. Mm-hmm. And then stabbed about, 24 times.
Many, many times that we can see.
Yeah. And then here, as we zoom in on Carl's face, it's like all at once, it's like a scene where our heroes are vindicated and also vilified.
They are. And then they segue this nicely into yet another flashback where Herschel is saying stuff like, you know, what are your values? You've got to model things for Carl and all of that. And it's like very clearly giving that little juxtaposition. So you're seeing that this is exactly what Carl is going to be modeling.
And
upon, but also Herschel's way clearly did not work.
right before this scene of horrible violence, mostly perpetrated by Rick, a little bit by Carl in this giant head stomp, Daryl um Daryl says to Joe, like, these are good people, right?
Hmm.
and then
Right.
and then Joe is like, no, I'm gonna talk them to death more real quick before we all die.
Hmm.
It's an interesting, like, Herschel preaching like farming is great, we could all be happy. Daryl saying these are my friends, they're awesome, and then
Then
Rick,
stabby, stabby, Stabberton. Yep.
yeah, yeah, it definitely leaves you like, what's happening? And then we have some interactions between Rick and Michonne later, like, are you okay? I'm okay. How do you know? Because I'm okay.
Some
We're not bad people.
no, we're not too evil. And her basically saying she would absolutely have done the same thing.
Yeah, and Daryl telling Rick the next day, what you did, anyone would have done that.
Hmm.
I had to laugh because I'm like, anyone would have throat bit Joe and then gutted pedo Dan.
But, I do think that that is not just playing into the fatherly instinct where if your child is in danger, and
You'll do anything.
especially in danger in that way, you're going to totally go berserker to save them.
Yeah, what I guess what sits least well with me is that he would have been still alive to do any of those things. Like, why
True,
didn't they
true, true.
just, he didn't hesitate. Well, Lou never hesitated. Lou attacked him. He attacked Lou in the bathroom. I don't know. There was a lot of dumb monologuing, as you said, that happened there. Daryl, in an interesting twist in this season, Daryl gives Rick a cloth and some water and is like, clean yourself up.
Yeah, I know.
You're exhibiting bad hygiene right now, Rick.
I know. That was pretty funny, actually. And also, we get to, Daryl fills him in on what happened to Beth, sort of. He doesn't really
No,
say. He's just like, she's gone. And
she's just gone.
so there's that.
Oh,
And then,
God. Wait, no, wait. We can't just go on from that so fast. HJ, you
what?
and I are traveling together in the zombie apocalypse, and I get bundled into a car, and
Well,
then
that's what I mean.
you have to explain to my best friends what happened. Are you gonna just say I'm gone, or are you gonna tell them actually what the fuck happened?
Exactly. I was so annoyed by this. And I'm just like, oh, Daryl, please. Or, oh, writers, please. This is just not good. But, there's also the touching moment between Daryl and Rick where Rick is like, you're my brother, man. And which is interesting since, Merle was actually Daryl's brother.
And Shane was kind of like Rick's brother.
Right. So I don't know if you want to be Rick's brother, but you are right now. So
Congrats.
so there's that. But then they both they all band together to go to Terminus. And I do have to say, at least in Rick and Daryl and Michonne's case, in Carl's case, they're taking precautionary measures. Though again, I don't know that they are taking as many as you would. Would you really bring everybody in if you didn't know what you were walking into? And that also bothered me about the Glen Maggie entrance into this little Nirvana.
That they all just walked in a clump.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Like,
right. They don't leave any reserves.
Wouldn't you,
Than,
like, in addition to burying your weapons or burying your reserve weapons, wouldn't you perhaps leave somebody behind who could maybe rescue you?
Yep. And at the beginning of season 5, it turns out that they did, sort of.
Sort of, yeah. So,
It was Judith.
yeah. And at least with their entrance, you totally get the feeling that there is something off. And you understand why they're being, they're, the Terminus denizens are trying to lull them into a sense of peacefulness, security. But during this whole speech, I was still feeling like something was wrong. And, despite Gareth's good words,
Good looks.
and then going out to get some human meat from Mary, there is definitely this feeling that things are not right. And Rick is justified in his actions because he basically sees Glenn's pocket watch, a la Herschel's pocket watch, hanging out there with, and he's recognizing other things too, like the poncho and all of this stuff.
The riot gear. And it
Yep.
turns out the Terminus people are dumb, because why would they just wear all that stuff? And why do you think that they feel compelled to feed everybody human meat when they arrive?
Maybe to draw them in to see the reaction. I actually thought that the meat must be drugged somehow. Like
Mm,
that's how they get people complacent and into the railroad car. But since Rick's group doesn't eat it, we don't see that happen.
yeah, and I don't recall if we hear next season if from Glenn's group if they ate it or not.
Right. So things go wrong pretty quickly once Rick sees the pocket watch, and he's using Alex as a shield, as a human shield.
Yeah, the actor who plays Alex is he's from the show Quantico, which came out started this last year.
Nice.
Have you seen that?
I have not. I think I
Yeah,
saw maybe like I saw the trailers, but just didn't really seem like it was something I would want to watch.
it's not. Don't bother.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. He's one of the better performances in that show. Is all. So I was like, oh, I recognize him now, but I certainly didn't recognize him previously. Is Mary an actor that we know?
Yes, that is Denise Crosby, of all people.
And who is that? Why do I know
Denise
that?
Crosby was on Star Trek Next Generation as
Oh
Tasha
my,
Yar.
Tasha Yar. That's right.
Yep,
That's
the
right.
half, she was, and then she also played, like, she came back after they killed her off,
Yeah,
playing,
as a
like,
Vulcan or something.
no, well,
Romulan.
half Romulan, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And then she also did that pretty awesome documentary Trekkies. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's pretty cool.
I have not seen it.
But anyway, yes, that is Tasha Yar. I was like,
Tasha.
Tasha Yar,
Huh?
yay!
Yeah, I
I
remember
am
her
that
death
nerdy.
scene. She got eaten by like a slime monster or something.
Yep.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So very interesting standoff with the Terminans, but ultimately they get funneled into this thing. It's a bit of a stretch that they would go through this much ammunition. I assume that they're only doing it this way because things broke down sooner than they usually would. Like you said, maybe the meat is drugged. They can't do this every time people show up.
Yeah, no way. But then again, Rick and his group surprised them and came in the wrong area.
But they ended up in the right area,
But they
right?
ended up in the right area. And
That's where the corralling started.
yep. And ultimately they end up in the same boxcar. And they didn't. That's the other thing. Like you can hear Maggie and them yelling,
Or those that might just be a different boxcar.
maybe. But anyway, they end up in the boxcar and they are reunited with Glenn and Maggie and get to meet the new members. And then of course Rick makes like the super, like bold statement, like they don't know who they're messing with.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're gonna feel pretty stupid when they find out they're fucking with the wrong people.
It reminds me of a speech that happened in the season 6 finale where a few people say, if we're together, we can do anything.
I know. It's like, yep, you can do lots of stuff.
And I guess, Rick's gotten out of some tight jams before, so he feels bold enough to say, like, just because we're all in here without weapons in this boxcar surrounded by people with guns, and we were totally tricked and outsmarted, they don't know who they're messing with.
Nope, they don't know who they're messing with.
It seems like a dumb thing to say.
Yeah, but it's nice to see everybody reunited, other than Carol and Tyrese and Judith, of course. But it's good to see them all together again. So yes, it is a little bit of a cliffhanger to end it on, but there is the bright side that they're together, even though they're together in a boxcar.
And we are aware that Tyrese and Carol and Judith are still unaccounted for.
Correct. So, I actually started watching the next season episode because I got excited after I
That's the
watched this.
thing. You can't do cliffhangers because,
No.
wow, I didn't go there, but I'm not surprised that you did. You definitely want to see how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just don't feel like you should have to wait, from March until October. Seems unfair.
It does seem very unfair. But in any case, that wraps up season 4. It's still one of my favorite seasons, despite some of my issues with how they mess with some of the characters. But I liked how it progressed. I liked how they got to Terminus. Like my small criticisms are pretty much nothing. I think this is still probably my favorite season of The Walking Dead overall.
I'd say, yeah, as a whole, or each individual episode was fantastic. As a whole, the story arc from idyllic prison life to Brian Harriet mini saga
Hmm.
to cataclysmic end of prison to wandering in the wilds like a disuse. It goes all over the map this season. It's like
Right.
three little tiny mini seasons um, wrapped up into one. But with that said, with that like somewhat disjointed overall story arc, even though it all makes sense, it all eventually makes sense. Each individual episode was really well crafted and really good. So that's what kind of what leaves you feeling ultimately like this is a fantastic season, even if you can be a little bit thrown off by the way that the story arc kind of progresses, which I think would be a criticism that I have.
Right. And we've talked about that as it pertains
Mm-hmm.
to some of those episodes. Um, and continues to be an issue, I think. But it's been fun talking about this, reliving this season. I enjoyed it. In some ways, I enjoyed it more than I did the first time I watched it. So I'm definitely. I'll probably be moving on to the next season, whether we talk about it or not in the near future.
Okay, yeah, can't stop you.
Nope, you can't. So
Well,
do you want?
I don't know. I feel like we've got to the end of our mission. We need to find a guy in the bathroom killing Lou to follow them to wherever they're going for our next mission.
Correct.
The claimers that are reanimated need a new purpose for life.
Yep.
Well, I guess that wraps up season four. Our review of that season, as we've said, it's kind of the hottest thing out there in terms of Walking Dead so far. Maybe we'll like season five even better on
On rewatch.
as we go back.
But I definitely can absolutely say I definitely enjoyed it better than season 6.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So when we are done with The Walking Dead, as Reanimated does, we take a little hiatus from reviewing these seasons because they go on quite a
Forever.
while. Season six, I think, had at least 2 hour-and-a-half episodes. So
Mm-hmm.
when we eventually get down to that, it's gonna take even longer. And so next time, get together with Reanimated again, and we will be reviewing a movie from 2015 called Re-Kill. We Are the Endangered Species.
Yep.
Dun, dun, dun.
Excited
So,
to watch that film.
yeah, awesome times. In the meantime, you can get in touch with us about what you thought of the season four of The Walking Dead review or the season itself by emailing us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at reanimatedpcast. And of course, our show notes are on reanimatedpodcast.com. I'm Stuart Tiffin, and I'm saying hello and goodbye.
Ciao.